Hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you're watching me from. I am so happy and grateful to have you. My name is Visa Shanmugam. I'm an empowerment coach for women, and I help them minimize or get rid of their limiting beliefs, their mindset blocks, and their self-sabotaging behaviors so that you can create a life of your dreams and you are living a life that you have intentionally designed instead of living a life by default. So if you're watching me on my Facebook business page or in my community, Becoming You, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're not already a part of my group, I encourage you to join it because I share a lot more juicy content on there, and from time to time I share on both pages. So if you don't want to miss out on any free content or workshops, I encourage you to join me there. All right, so it is the second day of 2018, and I hope you're having a great year already. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about a very interesting topic that came up in one of my recent calls with an amazing woman. She asked me the question, is judgment of others different from having an opinion of others? And I thought this was such an interesting question. So I told her, I said, judging others and having an opinion are two very different things. We all have opinions on things. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us interesting. That's what builds your beliefs. That's what makes you you, is, what side of a question do you fall on? We all have very strong opinions when it comes to certain things, on how to raise our children, on what we believe in, our faith, and how we treat people. We have opinions. But what is the difference between, I'm sorry, my phone is about to run out of battery here. But what's the difference between a judgment and an opinion? Why am I talking about this today? So I'll get back to the question, but the reason I'm talking about this today was because a new book was released today called Judgment Detox, and it was written by an amazing woman, my spiritual mentor, one of my spiritual mentors. I've never met her in person, but she's someone that has a huge following, and if you don't know her, I recommend that you do. Her name is Gabrielle Bernstein. She's American. She is probably one of our leading thought leaders in today's time on spirituality, and she's been featured on Oprah Winfrey, Deepak Chopra, with some of the biggest people on media. So she released a book today called Judgment Detox, and I got on the pre-order list, and I've already started listening to it. And she talks about how judgment removes us from loving ourselves and from loving others. And I thought that was such an interesting topic. So when we judge others, what happens? We judge others because we sometimes tend to feel that we are better than them, and so we judge them for that. Or sometimes we feel that we are not as special as other people, and we judge ourselves. So for me, and you can never stop judging people. That is just human nature. It is just the way we're created. So, but we all do it, right? So how do you embrace the fact that we judge, and then how do you become aware of it, and what do you do with it when you find yourself judging others? So where does judgment come from? So for me, I used to judge all the time. I was the only brown-skinned girl at school growing up in the UK, and I was judged for my color by certain people, not everyone. I had amazing friends, but there were bullies in school, and I was judged for my color. So immediately it made me feel less than. It made me feel less than special. I didn't feel inclusive. I felt different. I felt ugly. I felt not good enough. And so I was judging myself because somebody else was judging me based on my skin color. And I used to judge people when I started my working career. I used to judge others when they were more successful than me. And I used to judge them and be jealous of them instead of celebrating their success. And I would judge myself for not being able to think of those ideas, not being able to be creative enough, not being as driven, right? So I judged myself for that. And then when I got sick with my autoimmune disease about 11 years ago, and I came to learn that it would be a chronic, lifelong issue, that there was no medicine that would just cure it and make it go away, I judged myself for how my body had failed me. And so this judgment goes on and on and on and on. It's all day, 24/7, where we judge ourselves. So when we judge ourselves, it's our ego taking over. It does not come from a place of love. We do it to make ourselves feel better than other people. And then we judge ourselves all day long. And that's probably equally as damaging as judging somebody else. We judge ourselves for not being thin enough, for not being healthy enough, for not being a good enough parent, for not being outspoken at work, for not being funny enough, for not being pretty enough. Like, we judge ourselves all day long, and it doesn't serve anyone any good. And we do that because it feels better to judge than to really examine the pain that's underneath the reason as to why we're judging ourselves. It feels safer and more comfortable to judge than it is to really examine the pain as to why we are judging ourselves. And that's why we judge. We're in pain. No matter what it is you're judging, there is some small part of you or a big part of you that is in pain. And instead of looking at it and healing that part of you, it's just easier to keep judging. So another one that Gabrielle Bernstein talks about is when we gossip and we judge others. And, we might get together with girlfriends and think we're bonding, and we might be gossiping about a group of people or a certain person, and we might be judging them. And it might make us feel better to put them down or judge them in some way to make ourselves feel better. And again, the reason we judge is because we're triggered by something that person is doing or not doing. And then it makes us feel better to judge that person, because we probably will then feel better about ourselves, and we don't have to examine our own fears and our own triggers. So this judgment thing goes on all day, and it doesn't work to really help us, because you're avoiding the real issue at hand, which is healing the wounds within. And we start to judge ourselves usually at a very young age. It's when, as Gabrielle Bernstein puts it, is when it's in an instant that our love for ourselves is taken away. So what does that mean? It's when maybe you had, as a child, maybe a toy was taken away from you, or a person who was supposed to love you did not love you the way they were supposed to. And so we judge those people for not giving us the love that we deserved or the attention that we deserved, or we judge the friends that didn't treat us the right way. We judge and we blame. And it is easier to do that than to do the real work of figuring out what is inside of us that got really, really hurt, that got wounded, and what is the work that we need to heal it. Because to heal it, we have to forgive ourselves, and we have to forgive the person that caused the pain. And so that's a lot more work, and that's a lot more scary work. And so it's easier to avoid that kind of work, and it's just easier to judge all day. But when we judge ourselves, we are ultimately the losers. Because after the judgment is done and finished, you feel wretched. You feel guilty to have done it. Hands up if you have ever been in a gossip session and you've partaken in it, and then after it's ended, you felt awful because you felt like you betrayed that person that you were judging. So judging not only is harmful for the person that you're doing it to, but it's harmful for us too, because the hangover of post-judgment is awful, because then you're beating yourself up for being such an awful person. So judgment doesn't win, you guys. It doesn't win in any way or form. And I don't know, I don't have a solution, because I'm still reading the book on, how to detox ourselves from this judgment. What are the next steps? But anytime you find yourself on the cusp, on the precipice of starting to judge yourself or judge somebody else, just become aware of the fact that you are separating yourself from love, and that you are giving into fear and your ego, and you're giving into scarcity. You are barricading yourself from love when you judge others. You are separating yourself from love. So when you judge yourself, you are separating yourself from self-love. It is easier to judge yourself than it is to love yourself in that moment. And the the better thing to do is to lean into the love, despite all your mistakes and your missteps and your so-called shortcomings and your shortfalls. Don't judge yourself for that, and don't judge others for it. Instead, choose to love yourself, not despite of it, because of it, because that's what makes you you. Choose to love yourself and choose to love the other person with compassion. And that's a hard thing to do, is to choose to love the other person with compassion. Because what would have made that other person to act that way? And that's why empathy comes in. It is hard to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, especially when they've caused us immense pain and grief and hurt. But instead of judging and blaming, if you stop the judging and the blaming, you would actually take the time to realize, how can I heal myself from this situation and free them and free myself? All right, so I hope that session helped. If it did, I would love to have a comment from you on what you thought about it, what resonated with you, and what do you feel about this topic of judgment, and what maybe had triggered you from this. And as I have gotten to know myself more deeply, I have started to, I guess, give into less judgment. I don't judge myself as much anymore. It's much easier to forgive myself on mistakes, and I am kinder and more patient with myself. When you judge yourself less, you're much, much, much more patient with yourself. And it is such a relief. It is such a release of pressure when we are kinder and more patient with ourselves. And so I close today with that note to you, and set the intention to be kinder to yourself. And when judgment, pops its head, just become aware of what is happening. Just become aware of the fact that you are letting ego take over, that you are leaning into fear, instead of leaning into love. And then the minute you recognize that you're leaning into fear, then it's easy to flip that and lean into love. A lot of times we don't realize we're doing it, and so it's hard to make that switch. But the key is to become aware of the fact that you are in judgment mode, that you are leaning into fear and you're giving into your ego, and switch and take that moment. All it takes is a moment to lean into love and be kinder and more patient and more compassionate human being. All right, I am going to sign off with that today. And if you had any questions and I didn't see it in the comments box, I am sorry, but I will get to them. And I wish you all a fantastic day and week, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.